Hello. If you ever want to test your self-control, try sitting across from your wife at the dinner table while knowing she's sleeping with her boss for a promotion. It's a fun little exercise in smiling through betrayal while silently drafting an exit plan that leaves no survivors. Most guys would yell, cry, or go straight to the divorce lawyer. Not me. I believe in poetic justice, the kind that takes time, precision, and just the right amount of patience. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Ryan, 36, a senior financial analyst in Chicago. I work hard, make good money, and up until recently, I thought I had a rock-solid marriage with my wife, Emily. She's 34, works in corporate PR, and always had big ambitions. We met in college, built a life together, bought a house, and had what I thought was a strong relationship. I was wrong. Emily had been restless for a while, constantly complaining about feeling stuck in her job. She wanted more responsibility, more influence, more money. She started staying late at work, coming home buzzing about how inspiring her boss, Daniel, was. A guy in his 40s, married with kids, the type that oozes corporate charm and probably has an entire closet filled with the same tailored suits. I wasn't thrilled about how much she talked about him, but I trusted her. Or at least, I did. Then, the little things started adding up. The way she guarded her phone, the sudden obsession with her appearance, the late-night work meetings that conveniently lined up with Daniel's schedule. I ignored the signs longer than I should have, but the moment of truth came when I found a text on her unlocked phone. A single message that confirmed everything. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for round 2. It was from Daniel. I felt my stomach drop, but instead of blowing up, I took a deep breath. This wasn't just a fling. This was strategy. She wasn't in love with him. She was using him to climb the corporate ladder. And that was my opening. See, Emily thought she was playing a game of office politics. What she didn't realize was that I was about to change the rules. So, I started planning. Carefully. Methodically. Because if she was willing to destroy our marriage for a better job, then I was going to make sure she lost everything she worked for. And when I was done, she'd be lucky if she could get a job folding sweaters at a department store. Revenge, after all, is best served in an email to HR. Revenge isn't about impulse. It's about precision, about patience. If I wanted to take Emily down, I needed to play the long game. A knee-jerk reaction would only give her time to twist the narrative, maybe even turn it against me. But a carefully crafted plan? That would ensure that by the time she realized what was happening, it would already be too late. First, I started gathering evidence. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation. I needed proof, undeniable, airtight proof. Lucky for me, Emily and Daniel weren't exactly discreet. The late-night texts, the hotel receipts she absent-mindedly left in the trash, the forwarded emails she forgot to delete from her work laptop. I took screenshots, forwarded messages, even managed to retrieve a deleted email chain between them discussing their next business trip, weekend getaway. I also started doing some digging into Daniel. Turns out, the guy had a history of office affairs. 2 former assistants mysteriously left the company after mutual agreements, both with sizable severance packages. Emily thought she was using him to get ahead, but he was using her too, and that was my leverage. Next, I needed allies. I casually reached out to one of Emily's coworkers, someone who had always been wary of her sudden rise through the company. Over drinks, I let a few concerns slip about how Emily might not be as loyal to the company as she seemed. I planted the idea that maybe, just maybe, she had a bigger agenda. It didn't take much to turn whispers into a quiet storm. Then, I went straight to the top. HR. I didn't just drop an anonymous tip, I built a full case file. I included every text, every inappropriate email, every piece of evidence linking Emily and Daniel's affair to corporate misconduct. But I didn't submit it yet. No, I waited. Because there was one final piece to set in place. I needed Daniel to panic. So, I let a little information slip. I sent him an email from a burner account, posing as an anonymous whistleblower. Just a vague warning, I know what you've been doing with Emily. Others do too. Hope you're ready. And just like that, the real unraveling began. Revenge is like cooking the perfect steak. You don't rush it, you let it sizzle, let the juices lock in, and only flip when the timing is right. And right now, things were heating up beautifully. Daniel received the anonymous email, and if there's one thing powerful men fear more than failure, it's exposure. He went into full-blown panic mode almost immediately. The man probably never had to deal with a real threat before, too used to having money, status, and the illusion of control to think that someone could actually challenge him. But now, he was acting like a cornered animal, and I had a front-row seat to the unraveling. Emily, of course, had no idea what was happening. All she knew was that something had changed. Her boss, her secret lover, the man she had risked our entire marriage for, was suddenly acting paranoid. And paranoia? It spreads like wildfire. She came home late one night, shoulders tense, fingers twitching against her wine glass as she stared at her phone, waiting for a message that didn't come. She wasn't eating much, wasn't making small talk. That carefree attitude, the one that had fueled her affair, the confidence of someone who thought she was on top of the world, was gone. I let it simmer. The next morning, I timed everything perfectly. I accidentally left my laptop open with an unsent email pulled up, the subject line glaring at her like a neon sign. Formal complaint of ethics violations and misuse of corporate power. The recipients? The board of directors, the company's legal department, and a well-known investigative journalist. The email itself was a masterpiece of damning information, a detailed breakdown of Daniel's past affairs, financial misconduct, and hush money payments made to former employees. And of course, Emily's name was all over it. I positioned myself in the kitchen, casually sipping coffee, pretending to scroll through my phone. I heard her sharp inhale, the kind of sound someone makes when they realize they just stepped onto a landmine. I didn't have to turn around to know she was staring at the screen, reading every word, feeling the walls close in. Emily went pale. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as if she was considering deleting the email, but she knew better. Deleting it wouldn't stop what was coming. She believed I had already sent it. And that was the real beauty of it. I hadn't. Not yet. That day, the tension in our house could have snapped a steel wire. She was distracted, barely able to make it through a conversation without checking her phone, her email, her calendar. Something inside her had shifted. She wasn't the confident, ambitious career woman anymore. She was scared, unsure, trapped in a game she didn't even know she was playing until now. Then, I started whispering into the right ears. Emily had a few coworkers who were ambitious like her, always circling for opportunities, waiting for the right moment to climb a step higher. It only took one well-placed conversation, a casual mention over drinks, a little fabricated concern about how she had been acting differently lately, how people were starting to notice her closeness with Daniel. I made it seem like an observation, a passing thought, but the seeds had been planted. And corporate environments? They love gossip. Within 48 hours, it had spread through the office like an airborne virus. By the end of the week, people were whispering in break rooms, exchanging looks in meetings, questioning how exactly Emily had risen so fast in the company. And then, the real panic started. I heard her on the phone with Daniel late at night, her voice low, urgent. She thought I was asleep, but I was wide awake, listening. She was begging for reassurance, asking if he had heard anything, if they needed to get ahead of this. Daniel, for all his supposed intelligence, was losing his grip. He was more concerned about his own reputation, about his family finding out, about what might happen to his career. The cracks in their little scheme were starting to show. By the following Monday, HR launched a formal investigation. It wasn't because of me, not yet. It was because Daniel, in his desperation, had tried to get ahead of the rumors by calling an emergency meeting. He pulled HR into a private room, trying to explain himself before anyone could accuse him of anything. But in doing so, he only made himself look guilty. HR wasn't stupid. They had been aware of his previous discretions, but now they had a reason to dig deeper. That's when Emily was called in next. She came home looking shaken, like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. She didn't even greet me, just went straight to the bedroom and locked the door. I could hear her pacing inside, making frantic calls, trying to figure out how much they knew, what had been said, and who had turned on her. She wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't radiating success. She wasn't looking forward to her future. She was terrified. And the best part? I was just getting started. The thing about corporate scandals is that once the first domino tips, there's no stopping the chain reaction. Emily and Daniel had built their affair on a foundation of secrecy, power, and manipulation. But now that foundation was crumbling, and I was watching it all happen from the best seat in the house. After her interrogation with HR, Emily was a shell of herself. She barely spoke at home, spending most of her time in a panic, glued to her laptop, desperately trying to figure out what was happening behind closed doors at work. I watched as she refreshed her email every few minutes, checked her phone obsessively, and nearly jumped out of her skin every time she received a new message. The weight of impending doom was finally settling on her shoulders. And Daniel? He wasn't handling things much better. Word had spread through the office that the investigation had escalated. HR was now interviewing past employees, digging through old emails, reviewing past promotions, and checking financial records. Suddenly, Daniel's open-door policy had turned into a locked-door crisis. He was missing meetings, dodging direct questions, and spending more time in legal consultations than actually running the company. His assistant, who used to fawn over him, was now avoiding eye contact, probably afraid of going down with the sinking ship. Meanwhile, I was still playing the role of the oblivious husband, casually going about my day while watching the tension between Emily and Daniel grow. They weren't just worried about their careers anymore. They were starting to turn on each other. The stress, the paranoia, the fear. It was eating them alive. Emily was losing sleep, her once pristine appearance slipping as she skipped her morning makeup routine, forgot to straighten her blouse, and barely touched her food. She stopped trying to make conversation with me, probably wondering if I knew something or if I was just caught in the crossfire of her self-destruction. She didn't even realize I was the one pulling the strings. And then came the breaking point. One evening, I overheard Emily on the phone. Her voice was hushed, but urgent. She was talking to Daniel, and she was panicking. HR had presented her with a stack of printed emails, conversations between her and Daniel, some of them months old. They had proof of personal favors, private meetings, and discussions about promotions tied to their relationship. That's when she said it. I need to protect myself. And just like that, the loyalty between them shattered. I knew how these situations played out. Emily wasn't going to fall on the sword for Daniel. No, she would sacrifice him first. He was older, higher up, had a history of similar affairs. If anyone had to take the blame, it would be him. And the moment she said those words, I knew she had already decided. Daniel was disposable. The next morning, Emily met with HR again. But this time, she wasn't defending him. She was spilling details. I imagine she tried to frame herself as an innocent bystander, pressured by her superior, manipulated into an unethical situation. She probably shed a few tears, threw in a few phrases like, I felt trapped, or I was afraid to say no. But here's the thing. HR didn't buy it, because I had already sent them the real evidence. See, while Emily was busy throwing Daniel under the bus, the email she feared the most finally landed in their inboxes. The one that outlined every single detail, with attachments, with proof, with a perfectly organized timeline showing exactly how she had played her part in this mess. Daniel wasn't the only one guilty. She was just as responsible. And within 24 hours, both of them were called into a final meeting with HR. Daniel went in first. He looked defeated, his usual confidence stripped away, his carefully maintained reputation shattered. He walked out an hour later without a job. Just like that, he was terminated, given a severance package that was nowhere near what he was expecting. He had no time to save face, no farewell speeches, no graceful exit. Emily was next. She left the office that day in complete silence, her face pale, her hands trembling as she clutched a sealed envelope containing her own fate. She walked through the door at home, didn't say a word, and locked herself in the bedroom. I sat on the couch, waiting, because I already knew what was inside that envelope. She had been placed on unpaid leave, pending further investigation, and soon, she'd lose everything. Emily was drowning, and she knew it. The silence in our house that night was suffocating. She didn't touch her phone, didn't eat, didn't even look at me. She just sat there, motionless, staring at nothing. The envelope from HR clutched so tightly in her hand that her knuckles had gone white. I watched her crumble, piece by piece, like a building with a slow-burning fire in its foundation. I could almost hear her thoughts racing. She had always been calculated, always prided herself on being 2 steps ahead of everyone. And yet, here she was, caught, suspended from her job, her carefully crafted career hanging by a thread. She thought she was in control of her future, but now, she had nothing, and she couldn't figure out how it had happened. The next morning, she left early, barely saying a word. No coffee, no breakfast, no carefully applied makeup to hide the stress. Just a woman on a mission to save herself. I knew exactly where she was going. Straight to her office, to try to claw her way out of this mess. But I had already made sure there was nothing left to save. She walked into work with her usual confidence, but it was all a mask, and I knew it. She wasn't the powerful, ambitious woman who had walked into that building a year ago. She was a drowning executive grasping for a lifeline, hoping that if she spun the right story, played the right card, she could come out of this intact. But there was no card left to play. I wasn't physically there, but I didn't have to be. I had eyes inside the company, a contact in the finance department who had always despised Emily's meteoric rise. All it took was a quick message from him. Emergency meeting just started. This isn't going well for her. Good. I had made sure of that. While Emily was sitting in that conference room, probably faking tears, swearing she had no idea her relationship with Daniel had crossed ethical lines, I was making my final move. A carefully timed email, sent anonymously to the company's biggest corporate clients, posing as a concerned insider. The message was short, vague, but just damning enough. Dear client, I wanted to bring to your attention that company is currently conducting an internal investigation regarding ethical violations among senior leadership, including the inappropriate promotion of employees through non-professional relationships. While no official statement has been made, it may be worth addressing in your ongoing business dealings with them. Wishing you the best. No direct accusations. No dramatic claims. Just enough to make the biggest financial stakeholders start asking questions. And once they started asking, it was game over. By noon, the company was in full-blown damage control mode. Phone calls were being made. Senior leadership was scrambling, trying to contain the situation, to assure their biggest clients that this was a minor internal review and not a full-blown scandal. But that's the thing about corporate politics. Appearances matter more than reality. It didn't matter if Emily was guilty or innocent. It only mattered that the company's reputation was now at risk. And just like that, she became a liability. Her meeting with HR was short, colder than the first. She had walked in expecting a negotiation, some kind of agreement that would allow her to quietly resign and move on to another company. Instead, she walked out unemployed, disgraced, and permanently blacklisted. She had no severance package, no references, no carefully worded exit strategy. Just a single letter, stamped with termination due to ethical misconduct. She drove home slowly that night. I watched from the window as she sat in the car for a long time, her hands gripping the steering wheel, as if she was too afraid to walk through the door and face me. When she finally did, she looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. Her hair was messy, her usually impeccable outfit was wrinkled, and for the first time since I had met her, she looked completely lost. She dropped her purse by the door, walked straight to the couch, and just sat there. 4 hours. No TV, no phone, just her, alone with the wreckage of her decisions. I let her sit in it. I wanted her to marinate in the weight of everything she had lost. Eventually, as night crept in, she turned to me. Her voice was hoarse, almost a whisper. Did you do this? I didn't answer, because she already knew. She just couldn't believe it. She thought she was the smartest person in the room, but I had been playing a different game all along, and I wasn't finished yet. Emily sat on the couch like a broken statue, her body slumped, her hands limp in her lap. The weight of everything she had lost was crushing her. I let the silence linger, stretching out between us like the final moments before a storm. Then, she spoke. Did you do this? Her voice was small, hollow, a whisper wrapped in disbelief. I finally turned to face her, leaning back in my chair, studying the woman I once trusted. She looked nothing like the confident, ambitious person I married. That person had been stripped away, layer by layer, until all that remained was someone who had gambled everything and lost. I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to sweat in the uncertainty, to think back on every moment, every small change, every tiny detail she had ignored. The late nights I didn't ask where she had been. The times I casually brought up Daniel in conversation. The way I never reacted, never exploded. She thought I had been blind. I had been watching the entire time. Finally, I exhaled a slow breath and spoke. What do you think? Her face twisted. Anger, guilt, confusion, all colliding in real time. Why would you do this to me? She practically choked on the words. That was the moment. The moment I had been waiting for. I let out a small, humorless laugh. Why would I do this to you? I repeated, shaking my head. Emily, I didn't do anything to you. You did this to yourself. She shot up from the couch, pacing, running a shaky hand through her hair. You sabotaged me, she hissed. You ruined my career. I stood up too, slowly, deliberately. You ruined your career, I said, my voice calm, unwavering. You slept with your boss for a promotion. You lied. You cheated. You gambled our marriage, our future, everything. For what? A corner office? A bigger paycheck? Her lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't have to sabotage you, Emily, I continued, stepping closer. I just made sure the right people saw the truth. The color drained from her face. Because she knew I was right. You, she started, but she couldn't finish. She was unraveling. Her breathing was shallow, her hands shaking. Her whole world had collapsed in a matter of days. The job she sacrificed everything for? Gone. The reputation she spent years building? Destroyed. And me? The husband she thought was too blind, too naive to ever see the truth? I was still standing. I picked up the termination letter she had tossed onto the coffee table. Dismissed for ethical misconduct, I read aloud, my tone almost amused. That's going to follow you for a long time, Emily. Her eyes darted up, panic flashing across them. She knew what I was saying. No reputable firm would hire her after this. She had burned every bridge. She lunged forward, grabbing the letter from my hands, as if shredding it could erase reality. And then, she did something that almost made me laugh. She reached for her phone. Desperation was a funny thing. It made people cling to delusions, to ideas that were long past saving. She must have thought there was still someone out there, Daniel, a colleague, maybe even an old friend, who could fix this. I let her scroll through her contacts, her fingers trembling as she tapped on Daniel's name. Call failed. Her mouth parted slightly. She tried again. Number no longer in service. Daniel was gone. He had cut ties the moment things started spiraling. Self-preservation at its finest. She tried a few other names. Former co-workers. Industry contacts. Nothing. One by one, they had distanced themselves. Her connections were ghosting her in real time. No one wanted to be associated with a scandal. I watched as her last ounce of hope evaporated right in front of me. Finally, she looked up at me, her expression a mixture of rage and devastation. So what now? She asked, voice shaking. You just, what? Leave me like this? I let the question hang in the air. Then I stepped forward, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. I already did. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. She wasn't worth the effort. And as I stepped outside, breathing in the fresh air of my new life, I realized something. She thought she had been playing the game. She never even saw the board. Bye-bye.